This is the Open University.
I'm lost quite possibly. What caused to opportunity? Nobody knocks, it's shocking, but at least I'm watching the Open University.
Hello my would-be Parisians, it's the 14th of July, which means that possibly at some point in this little vlog we'll be interrupted by expensive aircraft flying overhead to demonstrate the power of the French state. In a couple of weeks' time we have the Olympic Games starting, but I'm hopping on a train the day before the opening ceremony to go back to Berlin to work on music. This is kind of going to be the second record that I'll have released this year, although the first one was pretty early in the year. It was recorded here in Paris in January, and I put it out together with a bunch of remade and reassembled tracks, rejects, which was called 20 Frisky Whiskies, and you know, a bit of an Easter egg hunt, a treasure chest, a brand chest. I don't know what you want to call it, depending on whether you liked those albums. I kind of felt that my own album this year, Yikes, somehow it didn't please me as much as my records sometimes do, and I'm not quite sure. I kind of want to go away and start again. But just as that record was released, I did a commercial for it, a kind of spoof commercial in which I used AI. I started using these websites Udio and Suno.com to make alternative versions of the tracks on my album, musically imagined by AI, according to various crazy styles, from opera to folk music. And that got very exciting for me, and just the fact that you could feed your own lyrics into something as unpredictable as an AI music machine, a jukebox, which, you know, for once was producing quite interesting results, excited me. So I vowed pretty much at the release of that album to make my next album something to do with AI. Now there is a certain urgency to this task now, because Suno.com and Udio.com, these websites which are doing the AI, are getting sued by, wouldn't you know it, the copyright holders, the stakeholders, the vested interests in the music industry, for having trained their engines on existing music. Fair enough, you know, there does need to be some division of the spoils, because, you know, these machines are ripping off tracks. The interesting thing, having explored a lot AI production with these websites, the interesting thing for me is that you can often produce a track which is kind of based on something, and sometimes you recognize what it's based on. You know, Footsteps on the Runway reminds me, Baby, of You, or, you know, a lot of Depeche Mode. For some reason, these, if you ask for electronic styles, it doesn't know very much beyond Depeche Mode at the moment. So you get a lot of kind of, you know, Personal Jesus rip-offs and things like that. But sometimes it'll be based on tracks that I don't know, and I'm often requesting things in K-pop style at the moment. So I don't know a lot of K-pop. I just like the modern production style, the very clean and shiny and rather gentle production style of K-pop, in which 70s influences are clearly to the fore, but also there's a kind of up-to-the-moment production. So what I've been doing is I've been, afraid that these websites will be closed down. You know, the enshittification of everything is a law. According to this rule, you know, obviously online entities attract people by having a good service, which everyone's going to be talking about and signing up for. And for a while you don't hit them with advertising, you kind of give them an exciting experience, but the enshittification of everything as a law determines that this experience will be ruined eventually by, you know, the company will be sold. The original founders who had the creative inspiration, you know, will do some profit taking, and it'll be sold to, you know, some crap Microsoft type entity for millions, if not billions of dollars, and then advertising will start appearing on it, and it will start running down its technical services, and its usefulness to you will vanish. So, or as in the case of these current websites, perhaps the music industry will close them down. Perhaps there will no longer be a audioandsuno.com by the end of the year. Who knows? So what I'm doing is I'm stocking up just now on files which I can use in my eventual AI album. I think I'm going to start recording in Berlin as soon as I get there towards the end of this month. Avoiding the holiday season, avoiding the Olympics. Just now in Berlin, today in Berlin is horrific because the Euro football final is happening between Spain and England. I'm rooting for Spain because an England victorious is disgusting to a Scot. There's nothing worse than a victorious Englishman. So luckily I'm not there. I would be freaked out, I think, by all the British people descending on, paying thousands as well to descend on Berlin for the hotels and flights which are unavailable right now because of this football match. I'll have to hear them celebrating in the square today, even here in Paris, if they win. Whoever wins, I mean, the Spanish will be celebrating if they win. But yeah, I'm vanishing to avoid the worst of the Olympics, the terrorism and all the rest of it that's no doubt going to strike, or just the closure by the authorities of whole stretches of central Paris where you need a code, you need a RFI, a QR code or whatever to get into certain areas, like the area where my girlfriend works. She's had to get a code to go to her work during the Olympics period. And it took like 2 weeks after the application and verification of her status as someone who worked in central Paris by the river to get this code. So it's not been very smoothly organized. But let's see. I won't be here. I will be making music in the other place, the other European city, the second largest. I was going to say the second largest, but actually I was looking at the stats, and it depends on whether you whether you define Paris as Greater Paris, in other words, the Paris beyond the Périphérique, in which case Paris is the largest population in the EU, the largest urban area, or Berlin versus central Paris within the Périphérique, in which case Berlin wins. Berlin is the largest. Berlin I find less cosmopolitan, and cosmopolitan is a word I've been coming up against a lot. We are living in an era in which certain right-wing populist parties are decidedly anti-cosmopolitan. They try to define blood and soil according to racial definitions. They don't see the people living in the Greater Paris area, especially the non-white ones, as French people particularly, and they want to take away the right of those French people to hold office. For instance, if you have dual passports, the National Front is currently saying you will no longer be allowed to hold office, and also that children of immigrants, in other words second generation arrivals in France, will not be considered automatically French citizens anymore, this kind of thing. So, but it's not just a policy against cosmopolitanism or multiracialism, it's a policy against cities in general. They know very well that they can't win any seat. There were no seats won by this right-wing populist party in central Paris at all. Paris itself central Paris is divided into east and west. And I was reading an article in the Financial Times today describing the eastern area where I live as hipster, gentrified, probably champagne socialist, as some people might call it, since Anne Hidalgo, the mayor, is a socialist. You also see a big division at the moment between city mayors with progressive policies of taking into account climate change and being against motorization, carbon culture, all the rest of it, cars. The sort of gilets jaunes politics, which is very pro-cars but tries to identify cars as essential tools for poor people, and therefore is against any kind of penalization of car culture or restriction of car culture. So I'm in the eastern hipster cyclist vegetarian side of Paris, and also in Berlin. When I'm in Berlin, I'm in Neukölln, which is kind of a similar area. So I'm as they say, a bobo, metrosexual, whatever. whatever insults you can sling at me, I willingly accept them. I'll recontextualize them in my own interests and with my own affections. So anyway, yes, I'm going to Berlin. I'm going to be. The thing is, I've got some very impressive pseudo K-pop backings that I will start to work with, but they're not really me. And I'm not sure if this isn't going to take me further in the direction that I didn't particularly like about the Yikes album, which is a kind of crowd-pleasing, a kind of populism indeed. You know, the numbers that people seem to like were the AI-influenced tracks like Mondegreen and Saki Myth. So my parodies, AI-enhanced parodies of Manchester bands, The Fall and New Order. So in a way that's kind of me. I can do pastiche, I'm quite good at pastiche, but it's not me, is it? I mean, or maybe it is me. Maybe I am a rootless cosmopolitan who can simply pastiche rooted artists who have a real culture. What I do is I come in and steal people's cultures. I don't know. I think I want to do something. I want to maybe take some of these AI backings and then do very homemade, handmade, artisanal tracks, covering them up with mistakes and with kind of what I used to call songs in soft pencil. This was the name of a demo, a cassette I gave to Alan McGee decades ago now. Songs in soft pencil, the idea that it's a little bit soft-edged. It's like using different materials if you're doing visual art. You know, you can smudge charcoal or something and you get a much softer effect, which you can then balance with harder edged line drawings or whatever it is. So I don't want to be aesthetically revolted by laptop-y kind of music. Howard Devoto, I didn't even know this until yesterday, but Howard Devoto has a new album out. My great hero, Howard Devoto. And I listened to it yesterday and I kind of felt it confirmed what I said when I was interviewed in a Zoom thing a couple of months ago by Alexander Lawrence, and he raised Devoto, and I said, yeah, I'm a huge fan of Devoto. Yeah, I love Howard Devoto. He's one of my great heroes, and in 2014 I made a whole cabaret event in London singing his songs, singing covers of his songs. Yeah, he arguably is a poet, you know, rather than an all-round musician. I think he's depended very much on the great musicians he's assembled around him. He's a great curator of bands. Magazine was a fantastic mixture of talents, you know. And I had the impression, I did meet up with him and sort of befriend him in the late 90s. And we talked about making a record or making a duet or something. I had a song called The Most Important Man Alive, which was a tribute to Howard Devoto. He was going to do half the voice. Well, I mean, I wanted him to sing his parts in that song, but he, in the end, after thinking about it, he decided that wouldn't be dignified, which is fine. But I think I had the impression when I met him that he really depended on collaboration. He then went off and made a final album with Pete Shelley, which was not a great success artistically. But I realized that he's kind of a poet, and he's not really a kind of person who can produce music alone with a computer. And in fact, it was only around about the time of the Buzzkunst project, which has also been re-released or slightly reordered recently as a kind of tribute to Pete Shelley, that actually Pete Shelley, round about the turn of the century, Pete Shelley taught Howard Devoto how to use his laptop to make music. I didn't like the Buzzkunst album at all. I didn't like it musically, texturally. I think the Luxuria albums are the absolute peak of Devoto's post-magazine career. Noko Norman is a fantastic musician and made a great pastiche of Magazine. He was such a huge Magazine fan.
And there's also this collection of lyrics, 1976 to 1990, on Black Spring Press. I spoke to Howard and Noko today. We've had It Only Looks As If It Hurts published. I think you've said elsewhere you don't think lyrics stand up on their own to reading, casual reading, but are you trying to narrow the gap?
Oh, well, I think they probably stand up to casual reading. It's probably really detailed reading, which is where I would expect poetry to stand up, or to stand up as just a voice enunciating those words. You know, they are very much written, and were written to music, for music. to go with music.
On the new Devoto album, it's very abstract. Some interesting kind of quite avant-garde chiming sounds. He's produced on his laptop. And you can hear, he lives in Thailand, you can hear some sort of Buddhist gongs and things being influences. You can hear some Asian kind of style influences there, but very minimal texts on only about half of the tracks. Not particularly interesting. He's always, verbally, he's always impressive. I find him interesting, even when he's at his most vague and evasive, which I think he is in these. But musically, the thrill, the sort of John Barry-esque gallop and thrill of Magazine is absolutely absent. And I wish he would get back together with Noko to do maybe something halfway between his own solo stuff and Magazine. Even his last solo album, Jerky Versions of the Dream, is impressive compared with this new thing, which is so low-key and so shruggy, really, on first listen anyway. Maybe I'll change my mind. The thing about having heroes is that you have such high expectations for them. It's not really fair. I used to be like this with David Bowie. I really thought he was the man who could save the world, musically and imaginatively, artistically. So each time he put out a record which was just, you know, more songs that sounded like David Bowie songs, I was deeply disappointed. And I'm sure there are people who feel this way about me, possibly. You know, that they're my most harsh critics, and most of them seem to be reviewers on Rate Your Music, are probably the ones who really believe in me the most. So thank you. Thank you guys for holding me to such high standards.
Open University.
I'm lost quite possibly. What cost to opportunity? Nobody knocks, it's shocking, but at least I'm watching the Open University.
This is BBC Two. Now, Bob Harris introduces this week's edition of the Old Grey Whistle Test.
The bend you